With more than 6,000 small and microcap companies listed, if you're looking for the next apple at the earliest stage, then Channel Check truly is the orchard. The listed companies support Channel Check, so it's free for you, the potential investor, to gain access to institutional quality research from FINRA licensed analysts, advanced market data, industry reports, news, and a growing catalog of videos and webcasts. Make sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel and register for Channel Check so you're always up to date on what's going on at the small and microcap data place. Welcome to the C-Suite series presented by Channel Check and Noble Capital Markets. Noble is an SEC-registered, FINRA-licensed broker-dealer and the source of the equity research available on Channel Check. Today's interview features Ayala Pharmaceuticals, NASDAQ ticker symbol AYLA. Noble Senior Research Analyst Robert LeBoyer interviews Ayala Pharmaceuticals CEO Roni Mamluk. Visit channelcheck.com or click the link in the description for Noble's research on Ayala, as well as news and advanced market data. And now, here's Robert and Roni.
Hello, I'm Robert LeBoyer, Senior Biotechnology Analyst at Noble Capital. With me this morning is Dr. Roni Mamluk, CEO of Ayala Pharmaceuticals. We'll begin our discussion with some of the proprietary technologies at Ayala and some of the clinical trials in progress. Dr. Mamluk, can you tell us a little bit about proprietary technology and the drugs that you're developing?
Yes, thank you, Robert, and thank you for inviting me to this interview. So Ayala is focusing on targeted therapies in oncology, in cancer. The two products that we have are small molecules that are inhibiting a certain pathway, which is called the Notch pathway, doing that by inhibiting an enzyme that is called gamma secretase. So we have two products, we call them AL101 and AL102, that are gamma secretase inhibitors. Why it is important to inhibit the Notch pathway in cancer? So in certain cancers, the Notch pathway is hyperactive. And by being hyperactive, it drives tumor progression, it drives metastases. It is what was shown is that in certain cancers, if the tumor has Notch mutations or activating mutations, then the patients have poorer prognosis because the tumor is more aggressive. And what we have done in our development approach is to focus the development of these treatments on these cancers that have the best chance to response, meaning where Notch is active. So for example, if we go through our current clinical studies, we have two ongoing studies, one in a rare cancer called Adenoid Cystic Carcinoma, where we are recruiting into our clinical trial patients who has Notch activating mutations in their tumor. So Notch is hyperactive, and we are studying those specific patients. Then the second study that we have, it's also a phase 2. It is in triple-negative breast cancer. There also we have been screening for those patients with Notch activating mutations or fusions, and these are the patients who are eligible to enroll in the study. These two studies are open and enrolling, and there are studies with AL101, our lead product or development product. The second product that we have, AL102, again, also inhibiting gamma secretase. There, we are on track to open a pivotal phase 2/3 study in a tumor called Desmoid Tumors, where Notch has been part of the underlying cause of the tumor. And therefore, there we plan to enroll patients with Desmoid tumors that are progressing, but no selection for specific patient population. And lastly, with AL102, we have also partnered with Novartis and to combine AL102 with Novartis anti-BCMA treatment in multiple myeloma. There we are targeting a different role of gamma secretase, which is to control the level of BCMA on the cell surface of multiple myeloma cells. So this is where we are with our pipeline. Going into a little bit of more details, we have been reporting out of the adenoid cystic carcinoma. We reported last year at ESMO in September, and we plan to report again more data this ESMO. Again, it's going to be around September time. The recently initiated triple negative breast cancer, we are expecting to be able to report some data by the end of this year. We don't know yet whether it will be only safety data or also efficacy. It will depend on the enrollment into that study. And then, as I said, we are on track to open the Desmoid tumor study. And the partnership with Novartis, there is an ongoing phase 1 study in multiple myeloma patients where Novartis have been initially testing their bispecific antibody as a monotherapy. And at the right time, AL102 will be combined into that ongoing study.
Could you describe a little bit about these tumor types that you're testing the drugs in terms of the patient populations, the prognosis for the patients, and how these drugs might affect the morbidity and mortality of the patients?
Right, yes. So I'll start with adenoid cystic carcinoma, where we have already generated data showing that AL101 as a monotherapy was shown to be able to inhibit tumor growth in ACC. So adenoid cystic carcinoma is a rare tumor that starts in secretory glands, mostly in salivary glands. And then patients who are diagnosed most times will undergo surgery. And then in 50% of cases, unfortunately, tumor will recur. And once it's recurring, it is metastatic. And unfortunately, does not respond to current treatment. So no drugs have been approved for ACC. Many different treatment modalities were tested in phase 2 studies. Chemotherapy, less than 10% activity, efficacy. TKIs, tyrosine kinase inhibitors, and many other, the tumor is immunologically cold, so there is no immunotherapy effect there. So really no effective treatment options for these patients. What was shown in these cases that are recurrent and metastatic is that 20% of patients in their tumor, they have notch activating mutations. And this population have a more aggressive tumor. Their overall survival is 4-fold shorter than the population with the wild type notch. And these are patients that are actually progressing, their tumor is progressing fast. And again, there is no very effective treatment option. We are enrolling these patients into our study. And we are enrolling patients that have adenoid cystic carcinoma, recurrent and metastatic, progressing, so evidence of progression within a year prior to enrollment, and also notch activating mutations. We started with a dose of 4 milligram IV once weekly, and we have shown that we were able to see in that first cohort overall disease control rate of 68%. And that means disease control rate, but disease control rate means 15% of partial responses and 53% of stable disease. The reason we are, indicating the stable disease is that if you remember, we are enrolling patients with with progressing disease. So actually stabilizing the tumor means that there is a benefit to the patient. So there is a efficacy. However, the safety was the 4 milligram dose was well tolerated, and therefore we have increased in a second cohort that is now enrolling. We have increased the dose to 6 milligram, and this is ongoing. And we're going to report out of the 6 milligram cohort in September in ESMO.
That sounds like this is a subset of head and neck tumors, a type of tumor that's notoriously difficult to treat and has very poor prognosis. You've isolated a mutation in this difficult to treat tumor type, and instead of having a rapid deterioration, you're stabilizing these patients. So that sounds like a significant advance over the current treatment.
So the current treatment, the problem is that there is no really approved treatment, and yeah, we believe it is a benefit. However, what we are trying to do is to further improve the duration of response, the time where patients are still responding to the treatment. Yes.
Sure, but you were able to show activity with 4 milligrams.
Yes.
Now you're going to the next dose level with 6.
Yes.
Safety has not been a question. So by increasing the dose, you will look for more response.
That's the goal. The goal is to see whether we will see more responses with the 6.
Sure.
Yes.
You know, a typical dose finding study in a very difficult tumor type that doesn't respond to anything and has very poor prognosis.
Right.
So these patients, as you mentioned, frequently have metastases. And would this be something that could be used in other tumor types if it's successful here?
Right. So what we have done was actually from we are already in a second tumor type in the clinic, and this is in triple negative breast cancer.
Okay.
And we are enrolling also patients with notch activating mutations on fusions. The reason we are testing these two indications initially is because we have done work preclinically using patient-derived tumor models. These are models of tumor biopsies that are being implanted on the back of mice. And we have tested different models, ACC models with and without notch mutations, and TNBC models with and without notch mutations. And what we've seen in those models is that there is a significant inhibition of tumor growth with AL101 when you have the notch activating mutations. So yes, we are already in another tumor type, which is triple negative breast cancer, where we have enrolled the first patient recently.
Okay, so you're going from a very difficult worst case scenario head and neck cancer to triple negative breast cancer, which is also very difficult to treat, not a lot of targets for our current drugs to act on, and you found a mutation that can be used as a target and improve survival. So 2 worst case scenario tumor types, and you've found something that can interfere with the pathway that causes further disease.
This is correct, and you're very correct. You know, in triple negative breast cancer, indeed, the treatment options, most of them are chemotherapy based.
Yeah.
There is those patients with BRCA mutations that have the PARP inhibitors, but other than that, the treatment modalities are chemotherapy based. And indeed, physicians who are engaged with us and are part of our planned study were saying, when we were designing the study, they said, the option to offer a patient with triple negative breast cancer a targeted therapy, if they have the specific mutation, is very attractive. Therefore, the patients that are enrolled in the study are patients that have failed 3 or less lines of therapy. So also relatively early in this treatment paradigm, because in triple negative breast cancer, yes, patients respond to chemotherapy, but they tend to develop resistance and run through lines of therapy pretty quickly.
Pretty grim prognosis if you failed all available therapies, and
Yes.
you're testing it in the patients who have not responded to anything. So any signal of activity could be attributed to your drug. Would that be correct?
So we are not testing patients that have failed everything. To the contrary, we are testing in patients who have failed 3 or less lines of therapy. But anyway, if they respond to this therapy, that will be something that is of a lot of significance, because there is the toxicities that come with chemotherapy are not there with AL101.
How common is the Notch mutation in other tumors and in tumors that are other types of breast cancer? You're testing it in triple negative, but if someone were HER2 positive, would they also have it, or not?
So yeah, good question. No, so what we found and what's in the literature is that between 9 and 16% of triple negative breast cancer patients have Notch activating mutations or fusions, and not so much in other types of breast cancer. So we are focusing on triple negative breast cancer.
Are there other tumor types that you've been exploring or future indications?
Right. So we are currently exploring options, and this is done preclinically in our lab. We have not yet shared anything that is concrete plans. However, with our AL102, we are developing it to desmoid tumors. So maybe it's a good time to talk about desmoid tumors. Desmoid tumors they are tumors of connective tissue. They are not malignant. However, they grow locally, and where they grow, they invade, tissues around the tumor. They cause pain. They can cause organ dysfunction, and in some cases also death. Patients will undergo surgery. However, up to 70% of patients, the tumors will recur. And again, there's no much of effective treatment for desmoid tumors. So either patients will undergo, surgeries, or they don't have a good treatment option. So there is a very significant unmet need. The role of Notch pathway in desmoid tumor is actually through a crosstalk with another pathway, the beta-catenin pathway, and there it is an underlying cause of the tumor. So there we do not plan to select for specific patient population. There are no mutations in Notch. It's simply part of the underlying disease. And indeed, in desmoid tumors, so in ACC and TNBC, Ayala is the only company who is developing gamma secretase inhibitors through the modality of targeted therapy and selecting for patients with Notch mutations. In desmoid tumors, we are not the first to develop a gamma secretase. SpringWorks is developing their gamma secretase inhibitor to desmoid tumors as well. And there is data that were generated by Ayala or by BMS, where we in-license the product from. And also there is the data that were generated by on the SpringWorks molecule that shows indeed that there is we see effect on reducing the size of desmoid tumors with gamma secretase inhibitors. We have data in our phase 1 studies that were conducted by BMS, and SpringWorks had data from phase 1 and phase 2 studies that were conducted by Pfizer. SpringWorks, by the way, is ahead of us. They are in a phase 3 study. They have shared that they're going to report data in the second half of this year out of the phase 3 study. So we expect if the data are good, there will be, and if there is an approval, we are expecting to come to the market second. However, where SpringWorks molecule is given twice a day at a total of 300 milligram daily, our AL102 will be given either once daily or even a weekend dosing, so 2 days on, 5 days off, to a total of no more than 8.4 milligrams. So there will be a difference in pill burden, and that may be a good way to come second to the market and still be able to, capture market share.
Are these endpoints approvable by the FDA?
Look, we have designed the study in a very similar fashion to the design of the pivotal phase 3 study that SpringWorks designed. And also we had the discussion with the FDA, and there was an agreement on the study design that this, if of course proven safe and effective, this is a pivotal study design. So,
and just reiterate once again what the timing of the study is.
So then if we go like in order, so from AL101 we have, from Adenoid Cystic Carcinoma we plan to report in ESMO of this year, September. In triple negative breast cancer we are hoping to report end of the year some data out of the study, initial data, maybe only safety, we are not sure yet. And then on Desmoid tumors, we expect to report initial data next year, mid-year. However, we need to remember that SpringWorks, who has a gamma secretase inhibitor in Desmoid tumors, are expected to report data in the second half of 2021. So that can be also an interesting milestone for us.
Yes, and proof of concept for the entire category.
Right.
Can you discuss just briefly the financial situation for the company and the funding to get you through these trials?
Can I, before that, just mention the last program that we have on the Bcma?
Sure. Go right ahead.
Yeah, so we just kind of to complete the discussion of the pipeline, the partnership we have with Novartis is very interesting. It is on AL102, only for multiple myeloma. And there, interestingly, inhibiting gamma secretase, the enzyme with our molecule, create a situation where you have more Bcma on the surface of multiple myeloma cells. Novartis developed a bispecific antibody that targets the Bcma and inducing cell killing of multiple myeloma cells. So the idea is that the combination will improve the anti-Bcma effect and potentially also the duration of effect. So that's another very important program that we have. Novartis is running the study. Novartis is an investor in Ayala. They led the B round, and they're also they invested in the IPO. And they've been running the study, so they are reporting out of the study. So we are not at liberty to give expectation for reporting. But as I said, there is the bispecific antibody is currently in an ongoing phase 1 study.
Just to clarify the mechanism of how these two drugs would work together, just define Bcma and what the Novartis drug does and how it fits with your drug.
Okay, so Bcma is B-cell maturation antigen. It is a receptor on the surface of multiple myeloma cells, the cancer cells. Mm-hmm. The gamma secretase is the enzyme that sheds the receptor, cleaving it from the cell surface, and by that actually removing the receptor, removing the target. So inhibiting the enzyme creates a situation there is no cleavage, no shedding, and therefore more target, more Bcma on the cell surface. Novartis drug is a bispecific antibody. One arm binds to Bcma, the other one is a CD3 binder, so recruits cytotoxic T cells to attack the multiple myeloma cells and kill them. And we have shown in an ex vivo study that in the presence of AL102, very low concentrations, nanomolar concentrations in the presence of AL102, the bispecific antibody is inducing killing in a 2 orders of magnitude more potent way. So much less antibody is needed to induce the level of killing that is required. So that was a study that was done by Novartis ex vivo with blood from multiple myeloma patients.
So would it be correct to say that the drug is preserving the target for the Novartis drug?
Very nice. Yes. Yes.
And Dr. Mamluk, could you discuss the financial position of the company and your cash balance for a moment?
Right, yes. So we have reported the year end, we had 42 million on hand. In addition, we have raised in February a PIPE of 25 million. And together, this cash will take us into 2023. So we have sufficient funds now to fund the company, the 4 different programs that we shared with the cash that we have currently at hand and reach the milestones that we have discussed.
So it looks as if you've got a unique proprietary technology, several clinical trials in indications with no good, adequate medical treatment, and plenty of cash to get you through these milestones.
Correct. This is where we are.
Yeah,
yep.
That sounds very good.
Yeah.
This is very interesting, and you've laid out several important milestones for data that I'll be watching for.
Thank you, Robert. It has been a pleasure talking to you.
Thank you.
Robert, I found this to be a fascinating interview because the way you laid out the questions, it was very understandable and it seemed very interesting from just a viewer standpoint. I was wondering, how should people view this company and how unique is this company? Can you just give us your key takeaways about the uniqueness of this company?
Sure. I agree that this is a very interesting company, and they have a proprietary technology that allows their drugs to block a mechanism that causes proliferation of tumors. They're looking at rare tumors in the head and neck and in other types of cancer that have no adequate treatment and don't respond to the current therapies. So there's a wide open field. Even though these are rare disorders, the value of these therapies to these patients is enormous. And there are other indications in preclinical development that if they're successful here, they may be able to explore other larger markets with large patient populations.
And you know, I was impressed with the fact that this company's financials seem pretty solid to me. And I was wondering if we can just talk a little bit about your take on the company's financials and the prospect for the stock, given the fact that they seem to have enough funding for quite some time.
Yes, one of the important things that I look for in a company like this is that they have enough cash to complete their clinical trials and reach the milestones that are ahead. The company had cash at year end and then just raised another $25 million in cash in the first quarter, giving them 2 years of cash on hand and plenty of funding to complete the 4 clinical trials that are in progress. So these clinical trials will produce data throughout the next 12 months that will drive the shares and allow investors to see the progress that they're making, assess the efficacy, and will be able to update the valuation, and the stock price will likely respond to these things.
And Robert, it seems like there's a number of milestones coming. How timely do you think the stock is at this point?
Right now, the company has just raised the funds to run their clinical trials. The Clinical trials are in progress with data presentations expected in September and December, so that there are near-term drivers as well as a long-term trial to carry them through 2022. So I would say that now is probably a very good point to get into the stock as these things are running, and with milestones ahead, no offering in the near term, this is a very good, solid story. They've gotten the funding, they have clinical trials ongoing, and now it's just a matter of waiting for these milestones and data presentations to give proof of concept and allow the products to move forward toward the market.
Well, it's a very interesting company and very hopeful for a lot of people out there that suffer from these cancers. So thank you, Robert. Appreciate you bringing the company to us.
Great. Thank you, Mike.
Thank you for joining us for this C-Suite interview presentation brought to you by Channel Check. Visit our YouTube channel for more interview content, as well as virtual roadshows and conference presentation replays. New content is added regularly, so subscribe below to stay up to date. Visit channelcheck.com or click the link in the description to access equity research, news, and advanced market data on this and the 6,000 other small and microcap companies listed.